Welcome back to Steve Robb Reviews. Today, the review is going to be all about a Black & Decker toaster that I'll be using for my off-grid cabin up in Northern Ontario. Now, this particular toaster is nothing special. It's an 850 watt toaster, and we're going to take a look at it, and I'm going to do a little bit of electrical testing because, well, I've done a lot of electrical testing, and people are not quite too sure how to evaluate an appliance to how you use it with your power inverter, with your battery bank. And I figure this time of year be a perfect time of year to go over this so that you'll see this in action next year up at my cabin. So how do you know whether an appliance is, geared for your use? Because I know a lot of people, they just think they can just plug everything in and just hope for the best. Well, it doesn't usually work out too good doing that. So if we take a look at 850 watts. Now this is an appliance that's rated at 120 volts. So volts will change when you're using a power inverter. Amps are always the same, and watts are not quite comparable between AC and DC, but they're close. And you have a lot of line loss between your power inverter, they're only so efficient, and line loss in between all your connectors, your electrical wires going from your power inverter to your 120 volt outlet. Roughly 850 watts is between 7 and 8 amps. We're going to measure it, we're going to find out. Now, when they're talking about amperage, talking about wattage, people don't understand that all these ratings are over time. 1 hour of time in amp hours. So when they're talking about 850 watts for this particular toaster, they're saying in 1 hour, if you leave that plugged in for 1 hour and on constantly, if you could, instead of it going up and down, right? Well, you'd burn 850 watts in 1 hour, and you would burn between 7 and 8 amps. Well, we're going to test it. We're going to find out. And in 1 hour. So how long does it take to cook some toast? Right? Maybe 3 to 5 minutes tops. That's not an hour, right? So when you just take a look at 850 watts is roughly 80 amps DC. AC is about 7 to 8 amps, and on DC it's about 80 amps. Now, are you using 80 amps? Well, you would if you had this toaster plugged in for an hour. But if you're only having it plugged in for, 4 or 5 minutes, you take your 80 amps, you divide it by 60 minutes, you multiply it by the amount of time you had the toaster on, and that's your amperage. So I'm saying maybe 1.25 amps a minute, maybe 1.5 amps a minute. We're going to find out, because a lot of times when I do electrical testing, the specs just don't quite match. So let's take a look at the toaster. Let's see what we're up against. Okay, so that's where I'm going to do my electrical testing right there with my amp clamp. Here's the amp clamp. Here's the toaster. Got 2 pieces of bread in there, and I'm going to set it as high as it'll go. Now, it's got one for bagel, which will go actually longer than this, I believe, but we're going to see how that goes. Now, this is a $21 special off of Amazon, and I looked this all over, and you know what I found just incredible on here? Made in Bogota, Colombia. And I thought, wow, that's a long way to go, but it's not made in China because it's made in Bogota. So I think that's just terrific. I actually found something that's electrical that wasn't made in China. So okay, so let's get to the testing part here, and let's see how long this toaster stays on the maximum amount. Hopefully I don't burn the toast. Maybe I will. And we're going to take a look at the amp clamp here on my splitter, and we're going to see how many amps it draws. So let's get to that next. Okay, so you can see the amp clamp right there. I've got my timer on my cell phone, and as soon as I push the toaster down with the toast, well, let's see how long it takes on the maximum setting, how many amps it draws, and for how long. Okay, so we can see we're at 6.9, 6.8. So it's a little bit less than I thought. See, if you try and do the math, the strict math on Ohm's law, you're going to get close, but you're not going to get exact. So it looks like it's settled in at around 6.85 AC amps. So let's just let that run, and I'll bring you back when the toast pops up. Okay, so you've seen the amp clamp zero out after the toaster popped up, and let's just take a look at the time here, and it's 3 minutes 11 seconds. So let's just get this out of the way, and here's the toast, nicely done the way I like it. So the highest setting is going to be what I'm going to be using. So I know how much you guys all like math, so I did all the math for you. So let's just take a look at this and see, because a lot of people take a look at an appliance, they look at the wattage, and they think that's how much it's going to use. Well, let's take a look at the numbers. Okay, so let's just take a look at the numbers here. So as you can see, we'll just say 6.8 amps it was drawing, right, at 120 volts. Now the total time, I rounded it off to 3 minutes. So we got 6.8 amps divided by 120 volts. So it was less than the rated capacity. It's rated at 850. So I got 816 watts AC. So if we look at 816 watts and we divide that by my battery. Now we're on to the DC volts. So what's coming out of your battery? So we got 816 watts divided by 12.6 DC volts. We got 64.76 amps DC. You notice it's not 6.8, 64.76 amps. So now we take a look at the total amperage DC. You divide it by 60 minutes. So it's burning about 1.07 amps DC per minute. So we got 1.07 amps DC times 3 minutes. Total burn is about 3.21. I would say with line loss and everything else, I'd put this at probably 5 amps. Let's turn the page over. Now we go to 816 watts divided by 6.8 amps AC. Now, when you're looking at the 6.8 amps divided by 60 minutes, it's now 0.113 amps per minute. Go back on the other side. On this side here, we're 1.07 amps per minute. So you can see that the voltage does play a huge role. So now we take the 0.113 amps AC times 3 minutes, and you've got 0.339 amps AC. That was the total amount used, and then we've got the wattage divided by 60 minutes is 13.6 watts per minute. 13.6 times 3 minutes, a total of 40 watts were used with this appliance in 3 minutes. Not 850, right? So there's a huge difference. You got to use Ohm's law. It's quite simple, and this is just a rough guesstimate on the actual reading, because you'd have to do the actual readings at your inverter and at your 12 volt power supply at the time. So this is a pretty good rough estimate, and I feel confident that this will actually run no problem at my camp, and I'll explain the inverter that I have. Okay, so the inverter that I have provides me 2 outlets. Each one is 15 amps, 1800 watts. So I'm not using anywhere close to capacity of the inverter. And this type of an appliance is not like what you would see in a fridge, inductive loads that actually have to start up like a motor, because they will start up multiple times more than the running amperage. This is like a hair dryer or any of these other appliances that have like a heating coil, like a light bulb. You know, they go on to their maximum brightness and that's it. They don't actually start up multiple times higher in amperage draw or wattage draw than their running wattage or amperage. So I thought this would be an interesting subject to bring up, and the inverter that I have will not struggle at all with this. Now you will notice on your battery bank that you'll see a voltage drop. Of course, you might start off with like over 13 volts on your battery bank, and it'll drop and drop and drop because it is drawing a high load for only a short period of time. So you're not drawing, like I predicted in the beginning, this might be up to like 70, 80 amps, you know, if it was on for an hour, but it's going to be a lot less after I did the testing. So we're in the high 60s. So it's not like high 60s amps that's going to take out of your battery bank. You've seen the math, you've seen how many amps come out of it. It's not much. I'm saying maybe 5 amps, you know. And if you take a look at the AC, it's even less. So when you're figuring out all these things, yeah, it's quite interesting to figure out, but a lot of people are thinking that the rating of the wattage or the amperage is what it is when you turn it on. And it's not like that. It's over time, and it's based over an amp hour. So over 1 hour time, how much would you use? In this particular one, 816 watts. You would probably use over an hour. And then you could figure out the DC side with Ohm's law, and you get around 67, around there. I mean, this is just close, just guesstimating, but I'm saying, yeah, you'll have no problem running it. Now, the only thing is that your solar system, whatever solar panels you have up there, has to put all this back. And for me, my solar panels will produce around, I got 400 watts in solar panels, and they will produce around 22, on a good day, 22 amps in an hour. So you got to think about that as well. How many amps does it actually put back in per minute? So you got to divide your 22 amps. If you got 22 amps bright sunshine for 1 hour, you go divide it by 60 minutes, and then multiply it by the 3 minutes of toaster time. And you know, math is fun, isn't it? So thanks for joining me here today. I hope you found this somewhat interesting, and come back again in the future if you haven't seen this channel before. You might find something else interesting too. Cheers.